What is up everyone on YouTube, and today we're going to be talking about Navy Captain Landy, mostly because her banner is currently running and she is probably one of the best units in the game you can actually get, so I highly recommend actually pulling for her on this banner. And yeah, this is my Navy Captain Landy. Basically, you want to build her pretty tanky while having some damage because she is a very strong unit. She has a passive that gives her ramping attack buff, so attack is very good on her. She also is immune to debuffs such as sleep and stun, which are going to prevent her movement, and she also gets built-in critical hit resistance, and also will give this to her team at the start of battle, making her very good against cleave, and just very annoying in general. And then she has this S1, which everyone probably knows, single target attack, right? If you actually proc the secondary effect, you will use an AoE attack that actually heals you a decent amount, and you can soul burn this to guarantee that you actually proc that salvable fire extra attack. Then we have her S3, pretty much game ending after you get 100 fighting spirit from S1ing 4 times. You'll get attack buff, an AoE attack, stun them, and penetrate defense. This usually just ends up winning you the game outright. So it makes her a very, very annoying unit. It feels like you're always on a clock against Navy Captain Landy. But yeah, building her is pretty simple just because there's not really anything too complicated with her build. All you really need is decent bulk. I think health and defense are your top priority on her. You want to make sure she's tanky enough to survive, because if she doesn't survive to actually use her S3, she's pretty useless, to be honest. And because of that, you do want her to be pretty tanky. On top of that, you want 100% crit chance and a decent amount of crit damage. I think anything above 220% crit damage is fine, but you do want 100% crit chance because she is primarily a damage dealer. And for attack, you definitely want at least 3000 attack. My stats are obviously a little bit higher, but that's because I have better gear on her. But if you aim for that guideline, you should be good to go. For her speed, you can actually keep her at pretty low speed. Some people run her actually at base speed because she wants to rely on counterattacks. And that's because she is a knight, so you can actually equip her on Elbrus Ritual Sword. Makes it so that when an ally, except for, I guess, the holder, gets attacked, you have a chance to counter. And you also run her on counter sets, so when she gets attacked, she has a chance to counter as well. So no matter who's getting hit, Navy Captain Landy always has that chance to counterattack. And it's very, very strong because that way you can actually not invest too highly in speed and actually put her on like an attack percent or even health percent boots, and invest a lot of your substats into bulk. And that's because you just rely on counterattacks to activate your S1. She also can sustain herself if she counters by activating Salvo, which works as well. And when you do have enough fighting spirit, you just S3 after maybe 1 or 2 turn cycles, most likely, and you just win the game straight up, which makes her a very, very powerful unit. Now for her sets, yeah, like I mentioned, you want counter set for sure. Definitely want this on her for your secondary set. I think crit chance is very good. Some people like health percent, but I think overall crit chance is going to be the best value, so you definitely want crit chance and counter. Now for effect resist, even though she's a knight, she doesn't want any, and that's because she has built-in resistance to sleep and stuns. Those are honestly the only ones that really, screw up Navy Captain Landy. Because she's immune to it, makes her super powerful against, control units, because, artifacts such as like Abyssal Crown don't even work at all. So it makes her very, very powerful against stun and sleep heavy teams. Now for her artifact, you definitely want Elbrus Ritual Sword. I'm going to be honest, it's pretty hard to play her without it, but if you do want to play her and you don't have Elbrus, you could run like mature sunglasses, but this is limited, so it's even harder to get. You could also run her on a damage artifact, or you can even run her on a tankier setup with not as much damage on Aureus, and this can catch a lot of people off guard. It makes her still a good unit because of her passive, where she can give your team critical hit resistance, and she's very tanky as well. And even though she's full tank, her S3 should do a decent chunk of damage while having that stun. But yeah, Elbrus definitely the best artifact for her. You definitely want to make sure you have this for her. You can see the usage on this is probably going to be the highest for Navy Captain Landy if this will end up loading, because Smilegate's game is, yeah, she is the top 3. One of the top 3 users of Elbrus and one of her most used artifacts here. If this loads quickly, almost 90% uses Elbrus Ritual Sword, which is pretty insane. And you definitely want to make sure that you have her on this artifact if you can, because it's by far her best. If you look at equipment sets, you'll see counter set is at the top with critical hit chance, like I mentioned. So you definitely want to make sure you put her on the setup with decent bulk, and she should be good to go for pretty much any PvP battle. And even in PvE she's very strong. So in PvE she's very good in like expeditions. She's also very good in raid. She is a knight, so she's very tanky, so you can put her in the front line. She has built-in sustain, a ton of damage, and actually hits pretty hard, which makes her very strong for PvE. And in PvP she's just very good against cleave, right? The passive is very good against cleave setup. ML Pavel, she really screws over. Anything with stuns like Summertime Assyria, she screws over, so very good against cleave. Also, she's pretty decent just into slow comps because, like I mentioned, her damage ramps up pretty quick with her passive. and your S3 pretty much guarantees you that you'll win. Now for counters, there's multiple counters out there, right? Very common is Lone Crescent Bellona. She's very good because all of your attacks guarantee crits. So even though you have crit resistance in your passive, this still crits through it. And a lot of the times, when Lone Crescent Bellona also ramps up, because she has ramping attack as well, later into a fight, her Soulburn S1 will end up one-shotting ML Landys, even her S3 will, which is very annoying. So that's a pretty good counter. Another good counter would be something such as Lionheart Sturmia, just because Lionheart Sturmia benefits when the enemy counterattacks. So it makes it so that this passive is very, very strong against Navy Captain Landy. Now, Navy Captain Landy can still win against these units, which makes her very strong. Even though she has counters, she can still win. But there's still going to be some soft counters out there that you have to be careful about. Another unit that's very good into her is like Karina or Laya, because Laya likes long fights. Her S3 will actually one-shot Navy Captain Landy pretty quick. And Karina can do a ton of damage with this defense break on Navy Captain Landy and get cleaned up. So, another unit would be something like Midnight Galilius, because similar to Lone Crescent Bellona, she always crits. So you can see that, even though she's a very powerful unit, she does have counterplay, but she can still win against these counters, which not a lot of units can do, which makes her a very flexible and pretty safe unit, to be honest. Now, if you don't have access to good counter gear, if you actually go to the shop for this season and go to Conquest Points, for this season we have counter sets, and all of these pieces are going to be very good for her, right? The weapon, all the stats are good. Even though speed isn't the best, she can still use it. This piece is also very good. All the sub stats are very good as well. Even this piece, right? You can kind of see that all the pieces are going to be very, very good for her. So you definitely want to make sure actually that you use these pieces if you actually don't have really good counter gear, because all of these pieces are usable on your Navy Captain Landy. And the crit chance set, of course, you can get from Wyvern, but if you scroll down here, there's also another crit chance set. I do believe it's a little bit cheaper. Maybe I did buy it out, but there should be a crit chance set here as well that's pretty decent for your Navy Captain Landy as well. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Definitely pull for her. She's one of the best ML5 stars in the game. Very strong. You won't regret it. You'll use her pretty much everywhere. And if you already did pull for her, or you just pulled for her, let me know in the comments down below what kind of setup you're running her on. And I'll see you guys next video.